I should have known something was off when she kept checking her phone instead of reading the menu. Her smile, once soft, reserved just for me, was now some theatrical smirk for the crowd at the next table. Her friends had joined us last minute, uninvited. I hadn't planned for company, but I kept my tone polite, like I always did. Maybe that was my mistake, mistaking politeness for strength. She leaned back in her chair, playing with the wine glass like a cat does with prey. One of her friends giggled at something. I didn't hear what. I was too focused on her eyes, searching them for warmth, a signal, even a flicker of the girl I used to know. But they were cold. Flat. Then it came, so casually it almost didn't register. Honestly, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. Sometimes I wonder what I was thinking. He's not even good looking. I mean, look at him. Laughter. Not just hers. Her friends followed, not cruelly, not mockingly, worse than that. Pity mixed with amusement. The kind of laugh that says I agree, but I'd never say it out loud. I looked at her, and I didn't speak. Not yet. The silence made her bolder. She stood up, slung her purse over her shoulder like a declaration of war, and added, "A guy like you should be grateful I even dated you." Then she walked. Just like that. I didn't chase her. I didn't raise my voice or make a scene. I just picked up my knife and fork again and finished my steak calmly, bite by bite. The waiter came over awkwardly. I nodded for the check. Paid in full. Left a good tip. Dignity isn't about being loud. Sometimes it's about being the last one sitting. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of heartbreak. No, I've lived long enough to know pain passes. It was something heavier, older. Like when your father dies and you suddenly understand the silence he used to carry. I lay there staring at the ceiling, hearing her words not as insults, but as a final audit of everything I'd given and everything she'd thrown away. We'd been together for nearly 2 years. Not long in the grand scheme, but enough to build habits. Enough to imagine futures, name vacation spots, argue about paint colors for a home we'd never buy. I remembered how she used to reach for my hand under the table at coffee shops, how she called me her safe place. And now I was the punchline to her social game. But what hurt wasn't that she called me ugly. I've looked in the mirror long enough to know what I am and what I'm not. I've got lines around my eyes from years of squinting into sunlight, a touch of gray that doesn't ask for compliments. I've earned this face. What hurt was the ease with which she discarded it all. The casual cruelty. As if none of it mattered. No big fight. No sit-down conversation. Just a public execution of whatever love had once existed. Around 4 a.m, I walked into the kitchen and made coffee like I always did. Same cup. Same order of motions. But the silence in the house had changed. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was gutted. I stood there in my robe, holding a hot mug with both hands, and realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. She never really saw me. Not the real me. Just the version that fit her story. And now I was out of the script. And still, I hadn't cried. Not a tear. Not because I was too strong, because I was too tired. At 6:12 a.m., the phone started buzzing. I didn't move. Just sat in my old leather chair by the window, sipping reheated coffee, watching the street breathe awake. The first call came, then another. By the time the count hit 13, the screen read her name every time. Maya. Still saved with a little star emoji I never bothered to remove. I didn't answer. Not out of spite, but because the sound felt irrelevant. Like someone trying to glue back a shattered mirror with wet hands. Instead, I looked outside at the neighbor's dog barking at shadows, the paperboy throwing with the same crooked aim as always, the light crawling slowly up the trunks of trees older than her apologies. The world didn't care what happened to me last night. It didn't care about my pride, or her laughter, or that I'd sat alone in a restaurant while the warmth of the steak died with the last of my patience. Funny thing about mornings, they don't give you time to wallow. They demand movement, action, breath. And so I breathed. In. Out. The pain was still there, but it had changed shape. It wasn't sharp anymore. More like a slow turning of soil inside my chest. Something was being buried. Or maybe something was trying to grow. My thoughts drifted, uninvited, to my late wife. Claire. She would have looked me in the eye after a night like that and said, "You don't chase people who leave mid-meal. You let them digest their choices." God, I missed her wisdom. Not the sweet words. No, Claire never wasted air on that. But the grounded truths she could drop in a single line that would stay with you for years. I realized, in that moment, that Maya's betrayal wasn't just hers. It was a test of what kind of man I'd allowed myself to become since losing Claire. Whether I still stood for something, or if I'd traded my core for warmth that came with conditions. The phone rang again. 14th call. I turned it face down. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. By the 15th call, I answered. Not because I wanted to hear her voice, but because I needed to hear mine. "Hello?" she said, breathless, as if she had been the one left behind, as if she'd spent the night in silence, waiting for someone to come back. I didn't speak right away. Let the air stretch thin between us. There's a certain power in stillness, it makes liars uncomfortable. She started, then faltered. "Last night. I wasn't myself. That lion, the great absolver, wasn't myself. As if cruelty wears a different name when the sun goes down." I could almost hear her rehearsing it in the mirror, crafting the story where she becomes the misunderstood one. "I'm sorry. It just got out of hand. The wine, my friends, they were pressuring me. It wasn't supposed to come out like that." Still, I said nothing. I listened. Not because I cared to forgive, but because I wanted to see who she became when she realized I wouldn't interrupt, wouldn't rush in to patch the silence with softness. "Please say something." Her voice cracked, just slightly. "I know it was awful. I hate myself for it." Finally I spoke. Calm. Even. "I don't hate you, Maya." A pause. "Hope? I just see you now. Clearly." That broke her. I heard it. The breath that caught, the whimper buried behind a throat clenched too tight. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "But I do," I replied. "And I wish I'd seen it sooner. Not your mistake. My blindness." She tried again. Words scrambled over themselves, offers of explanations, flashes of guilt, some desperate plea for a reset. But you can't reset something you never truly built. You can only start over, and starting over isn't always the same thing as coming back. "I paid for the dinner," I said. "Not because I'm weak, but because I don't leave my dignity at the table." And then I ended the call. Not because I was done speaking, but because I was finally done listening to the wrong voice. After I hung up, the silence didn't feel empty, it felt earned. Like a clearing in the woods after the storm tears through and uproots what was never strong enough to stand. I sat back, exhaled, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. But that didn't mean I wasn't hurting. There's a grief that comes not from the loss of love, but from the realization that what you thought was love never truly saw you. That's the kind of ache that doesn't shout, it hums beneath your ribs, low and constant, like an engine that never quite turns off. I walked into the closet and found her coat still hanging beside mine. A little red thing with a broken button she'd always meant to fix. I stared at it for a long time, remembering how she once told me she wore red when she wanted to feel powerful. Funny. She didn't take it with her last night. Maybe she didn't feel powerful walking out. Or maybe she just forgot it. I should have thrown it out. Or donated it. But I folded it, placed it in a box, and left it by the door. That's the thing about being a man who's seen enough life. You don't destroy what's already broken. You just stop pretending it can hold you. There were so many things I could have said to her over the past months. About the way she changed. About the way I shrank to keep the peace. About the dinners where my stories were cut short so hers could shine. But I said none of them. Not because I lacked the words, but because I kept hoping she'd see it herself. And now I understood, people don't change when you suffer in silence. They change, if at all, when your silence ends. Not in anger, but in departure. The rest of the day moved like a quiet tide, steady, slow, almost reverent. I stayed off the phone. Didn't speak to anyone. Just existed in the house we once half shared. I passed the guest room, the one we were going to turn into an office. The paint cans were still there, unopened, collecting dust. I remember how she once stood in that doorway, barefoot, asking if I thought a light blue would make her feel more focused. I said sure. She smiled like a child getting permission to dream. But we never painted it. Like 100 other things we never finished. Weekend plans postponed, books unopened, conversations suspended mid-thought. Little things, but little things add up. One delay at a time, and suddenly you're living in a house of paused intentions. I opened the window in that room. Let the stale air out. The wind rolled in, cool and honest. No perfume. No script. Just wind. Somewhere deep inside me, I knew I'd been clinging to an idea of her, not the truth of her. That's a hard thing to admit. Especially for men like me, men who fix leaky faucets, keep promises, replace light bulbs before they die. We believe in repair. In commitment. But sometimes, what's broken isn't a pipe or a plan, it's a person's regard for you. And no wrench on earth can fix that. I stood in that room, surrounded by untouched plans, and realized something sharp and simple. I'd been building a future for two, with someone who kept packing her bags in silence. She hadn't left last night. She'd been leaving all along. I just didn't want to see the door inching open. And now that it had slammed shut, I felt no rage. Just the settling of dust. The quiet honesty of walls that no longer needed to lie. That evening, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the same spot where I used to read the morning paper while she scrolled through her phone. Across from me, the chair she once claimed with a cardigan draped over it like a flag. It was empty now. No scent. No shadow. Just wood and absence. I pulled out a drawer and found the little things. Receipts from dinners we swore were just a treat. A birthday card she once gave me with a quote about growing together, no message inside, just her name scribbled quick, like a transaction. A bottle cap from a beach trip where I carried the bags while she posed for strangers' photos. These aren't the things you frame. These are the things you find when it's over, and you finally stop lying to yourself about how happy you were. I didn't cry. I haven't cried in years. But I did feel something unnameable settle behind my eyes. Not sorrow. Not even regret. More like recognition. The moment you see clearly what you tolerated in the name of hope. And here's the thing no one tells you when you're young: you don't get extra points for staying where you're unloved. I looked around my home, not hers, not ours, mine, and saw everything still standing. The old cabinet I built with my hands. The framed photo of my daughter when she still thought I hung the moon. The crooked lamp Claire once called charmingly hideous. This wasn't rubble. This was survival. I realized then, love doesn't just fail when people change. It fails when one person keeps showing up fully while the other quietly retreats behind politeness and performance. I'd been present. Even when it hurt. Even when I knew something was missing and couldn't name it. And that's what I keep. Not the pain. Not her voice in that restaurant. What I keep is that I didn't walk away from myself trying to hold someone who already let go. The next morning, I got up early. No alarm. Just the sun sliding across the floor like it used to in the house where I raised my daughter, where Claire read novels by the window and coffee always tasted a bit like peace. I dressed slow. Not because I was tired, but because I wanted to feel every layer of the day settling on me. The shirt I chose had a tear near the sleeve. I wore it anyway. Some things don't need mending, they just need to be worn with understanding. At 8:09 a.m., a message from Maya. Please, can we talk? I don't know what came over me. I didn't open it. I didn't delete it either. I let it sit there like an unopened letter from a past life. Some stories don't need a final chapter. I went outside. Sat on the front porch with black coffee and the hum of sparrows overhead. The world felt lighter. Not happy. Not yet. But honest. I thought about what it means to walk away without anger. How that used to seem like weakness to me in my younger years. Back when everything was a contest, of pride, of pain, of who could speak last. But now, at this age, I know better. Strength isn't in revenge. It's in the restraint not to deliver it. I could have responded. Could have pointed out the cruel timing, the performance she staged with laughter as her weapon. I could have explained what it means to be humiliated in a room where you paid for everyone's meal, even as they watched you be discarded like the last bite no one wants. But no. I chose silence. Not because I had nothing left to say, but because I had finally said enough to myself. There's a kind of dignity that doesn't raise its voice. That doesn't need to be right. It just refuses to go back. And as I watched the neighborhood slowly come alive, with lawnmowers, kids on bikes, the distant rumble of garbage trucks, I felt something unexpected. A readiness. Not to find someone new. Not yet. But to rebuild the man I let sit quietly in the background of his own life. And this time, he won't be waiting at any table for someone to come back. He's already walking out the door. Not broken. Not bitter. Just free. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to help this video reach more viewers. See you in the next one.